The child was not supposed to be in the restricted corridor. Staff Sergeant Mara Voss knew this the moment she spotted the small figure crouched near the base of the sealed diplomatic chamber door, a girl, maybe 7 years old, with dark braids and her father's old military jacket draped over her shoulders like a cape. Mara recognized her instantly. Ambassador Chen's daughter. Lily. The one everyone in the compound called the Shadow because she appeared wherever she wasn't supposed to be and vanished before anyone could properly scold her. Mara didn't run. Running attracted attention, and the last thing this corridor needed was attention. She walked, measured, even, professional, her boots making no more sound than breath against the polished floor. The biometric seals on either side of the diplomatic chamber glowed amber. Active. The Queen's convoy had arrived 40 minutes early. Protocol said the chamber was already hot, already pressurized to Varel atmospheric specifications, already monitored by 6 different surveillance systems feeding directly to Admiral Reyes on the upper deck. Lily, Mara said, her voice so low it barely disturbed the air. The girl looked up. In her hands was a wrapped piece of flatbread. Still steaming. She had clearly taken it from the staff kitchen 2 levels down, and she was holding it the way children hold things they know they shouldn't have, with complete certainty that the rules didn't apply to them in this precise moment. "There's someone crying in there," Lily said. Matter of fact. No drama. She pressed her ear flat against the chamber door as if listening to rain. Mara's entire body went still. The Varel Queen, Sovereign Rethala of the 6th Interplanetary Accord, did not cry. The intelligence briefings on Varel emotional expression were 300 pages long and crying was not in them. Varel displayed grief through controlled silence, displeasure through temperature drop, satisfaction through harmonic vibration in their secondary vocal cords. The word crying in any human sense had no translation in Varel diplomatic documentation. "Step back from the door," Mara said. "She sounds like my mom did," Lily continued, not moving. "After Dad left. Like she's trying really hard not to make any noise, but it keeps coming out anyway." Mara put her hand on Lily's shoulder, gentle, firm, and pulled her 2 steps back from the door. She keyed her earpiece. Voss to command. "I have a civilian in Corridor 7. Ambassador's daughter. Request immediate escort to family quarters." She paused. "Also request a welfare check on Chamber 1. Non-emergency protocol." Static. Then, copy, Voss. Escort incoming. Chamber 1 is sealed per pre-summit agreement. No entry without dual command authorization. She released the channel. Lily was staring at the door. "She hasn't eaten," Lily said with absolute confidence. "I can tell. My stomach sounds like that when I haven't eaten." Mara looked at the flatbread in the child's hands. Then, at the sealed door. Then, at the amber glow of the biometric lock, a lock that would take Admiral Reyes and Ambassador Chen both pressing their palms simultaneously to open. A lock built specifically to prevent any unauthorized contact with the Queen during the critical pre-summit isolation window, because the last time a Varel sovereign was disturbed during isolation preparation, the diplomatic team on Kepler Station had spent 6 months rebuilding a trade agreement from scratch. The earpiece crackled again. "Escort is 4 minutes out, Voss." 4 minutes. Lily pressed her ear back to the door. From inside the chamber, and Mara heard it this time, faint but unmistakable, like something resonating at the very bottom of a well, came a sound that had no name in any human language she knew. Low. Rhythmic. Broken at irregular intervals. Not mechanical. Not atmospheric adjustment. The Varel Queen was breathing in a pattern that the briefing documents had never described. Mara had served in 4 combat zones. She had stood at the edge of a collapsing evac tunnel on Proxima Station with nothing but a flashlight and a field radio, and she had remained calm. She was calm now. But her hand, still resting on Lily's shoulder, tightened almost imperceptibly, because Mara had read something in the medical annex of those 300 pages. A single paragraph, almost buried. Varel physiology entered a state called Velva, roughly translated as hunger collapse, when the sovereign was stressed, isolated, and metabolically depleted simultaneously. The briefing noted it was extremely rare. It also noted it was the single biological state in which a Varel Queen's secondary defense mechanisms, the ones that had leveled a warship on Cassian for during a trade dispute in 2187, activated involuntarily. The sound from inside the chamber shifted. Just slightly. Lower. Slower. Lily held up the flatbread. She needs this, the girl said simply. Mara looked at the door. Looked at the amber lock. Looked at the child holding steam-warm bread with both hands like an offering. For minutes suddenly, felt like a very long time. The escort never came in 4 minutes. It came in 6. Mara knew this because she counted. She counted the way soldiers count things when they cannot move and cannot speak and can only observe, quietly, precisely, letting the numbers anchor her to something rational while everything else in the situation pressed against the edges of rational like water against a cracking hull. At minute 1, the sound from inside the chamber deepened. Mara had her palm flat against the door now, not pressing, not pushing, just feeling. The surface vibrated in a frequency she felt in her back teeth rather than her fingertips. The briefing documents called that frequency secondary resonance initiation. The medical annex called it the precursor to Velvar Stage 2. Stage 2 meant the Queen's thermal regulation was failing. Stage 3 meant everything in a 30-meter radius would know about it. At minute 2, Lily stopped asking questions. She stood beside Mara with the flatbread held against her chest, watching the older woman's face with the focused patience of a child who has learned that adults tell you important things not with their words but with their jaw muscles and their eyes. Mara's jaw was very tight. Her eyes were on the door. She keyed her earpiece. VOS to command. Request dual authorization for Chamber 1 access. Medical concern. Repeat, medical concern, non-hostile. The response came from someone she didn't recognize. A junior officer. Sergeant, dual authorization requires both the Admiral and the Ambassador to be physically present at the secondary command console. Ambassador Chen is currently in debrief on level 4. Admiral Reyes is, a pause, shuffling, the sound of someone checking a screen, is in transit from the upper deck. Estimated 6 minutes. I need that reduced, Mara said. I'll relay the request. She released the channel. The vibration in the door intensified. Not dramatically. There was no cracking, no visible change, no alarm triggering. But Mara felt it the way you feel a storm changing pressure before the first drop falls. The amber glow of the biometric lock flickered once. Just once. That wasn't supposed to happen. At minute 3, Lily said, "The lock is scared." Mara looked at her. "Locks don't get scared," Mara said. Her voice was steady. "It had to be." "It flickered," Lily said. "Things flicker when they're scared. Like lights in a storm." She paused. "What happens if she doesn't eat?" Mara said nothing for exactly 4 seconds. Then, "Something we want to avoid." Lily looked at the bread. Then, at the door. Then, at Mara. The child's face went through a series of expressions that Mara recognized as the process of a smart person reaching a conclusion that the situation had already decided for them. "You can't open it without the Admiral and the Ambassador," Lily said. "Correct." "But she needs food now." "We don't know that for certain." "You do," Lily said. "Not accusatory. Just factual. Your hand is on the door." Mara realized she hadn't moved her palm. She pulled it back. The vibration she'd felt through the surface seemed to follow her, settling into the bones of her wrist like a memory. At minute 4, the biometric lock flickered again. Twice this time. And a sound reached them that hadn't been there before, not from inside the chamber but from the corridor itself, from the environmental systems, a drop in ambient temperature so sudden and precise that Mara saw her own breath for half a second before the heating regulators compensated. Stage 2 thermal failure. Outside the chamber now. Bleeding through the walls. VOS to command. She kept her voice level. Flat. Escalate to emergency protocol. I need dual auth in the next 60 seconds or I need someone to tell me what the thermal containment limit is for this section of the corridor, because we are already past the pre-stage indicators and I am standing in a hallway with a child and a Varel sovereign who has not eaten in. She stopped. Did the math from the mission briefing. The Queen had been in diplomatic transit for 19 hours. The Varel metabolic cycle required intake every 16. In over 3 hours past her biological threshold. Silence on the channel. Then, a new voice. Admiral Reyes. VOS. Confirm your assessment. I confirm, Admiral. A pause. In that pause, Mara heard things. The distant sound of boots on stairs, moving fast. The hum of a console somewhere being activated. And, from behind the door, that low broken rhythm, the Queen's breathing, slowing in a way that no longer sounded like sadness and had started to sound like something else entirely. Something older. Something that had nothing to do with diplomacy or protocol or trade agreements. Ambassador Chen is 4 minutes out, Reyes said. Hold your position. Admiral, I don't believe we have 4 minutes. Another pause. Shorter. What is your recommendation, Sergeant? Mara looked at Lily. The girl was watching her with both hands wrapped around the flatbread, her chin slightly raised, her eyes completely clear, the expression of someone who has already accepted what needs to happen and is simply waiting for the adult in the room to catch up. Mara had stood at the edge of a collapsing tunnel. She had made the call then, too. She had been right. She had also been wrong once, on a station she didn't talk about, and the weight of that wrong was something she carried in the left side of her chest like a second heartbeat. She made the call. Lily, she said, give me the bread. The girl handed it over without hesitation. Mara pressed her palm to the biometric scanner. One handprint. Unauthorized. The lock flashed red and held. She expected that. She reached into her jacket and withdrew her override key, a physical key, old-fashioned brass alloy, issued to senior security personnel for life safety emergencies only, never used without dual command authorization, never used without documentation, never used without consequences she would account for fully and without complaint later. She inserted it. The lock shifted from amber to white. One handprint remained on the scanner, waiting. The override held the door in a ready state, accessible, but requiring one final authorization. A palm. Any palm registered in the system. Mara looked at Lily. Lily's father had been an ambassador. His biometrics were in the system. As his dependent, Lily's handprint had been logged at compound entry for security tracking. Put your hand on the scanner, Mara said. Lily put her hand on the scanner. The door opened. The air inside was wrong in every way that mattered. It was cold. Not the cold of a malfunctioning system, but intentional cold, Velva cold, the Queen's body drawing heat inward, conserving, protecting, the biological equivalent of a star collapsing into itself before the explosion. The chamber was lit in the violet spectrum the Varel preferred, and every surface was precisely arranged according to the pre-summit specifications. The low ceremonial table, the atmosphere processes, the 6 pillars of signal dampening material that made the room feel simultaneously vast and sealed. The Queen was on the floor. Not collapsed. Not unconscious. Seated, deliberately, formally, in the cross-limb posture that the briefing documents described as the Varel position of deep isolation. But her head was bowed in a way that had no formal name in any document Mara had read. Her carapace, which should have been iridescent blue-gold in health, had dimmed to a flat grey along the upper segments. Her secondary eyes, the smaller pair above the primary set, were closed. Her breathing was the sound Lily had described through the door, and up close it was not crying in any human sense, but it was loss made audible, and Mara felt it in the same place she felt the weight she carried in her chest. Rethala, sovereign of the 6th Interplanetary Accord, ruler of 9 inhabited systems, signatory to the Cassian Treaty and the Kepler Compact, had been in that position for how long? Since the convoy arrived early. Since the chamber sealed. Alone. In the cold she was generating herself. Waiting for a summit that would determine whether 7 billion humans on 4 colony worlds remained under the protective umbrella of Varel space law or were reclassified as an independent non-aligned species, meaning prey, in practical terms, to 3 other spacefaring civilizations that were not signatories to anything. Mara stepped inside. Lily followed before Mara could stop her. The Queen's primary eyes opened. They were gold. The briefing documents had noted this. They had not adequately prepared Mara for what gold looked like in a being whose biology had evolved across 9 star systems. Not the gold of metal or paint, but the gold of something that had looked at enough darkness to understand exactly what light was worth. Those eyes went first to Mara. Then to the child. Then to the flatbread in Mara's hands. No one moved. No one spoke. The sound of the Queen's breathing filled the chamber and the cold pressed against every exposed surface of Mara's skin, and she was calculating, still calculating, always calculating. It was what kept her alive. Whether this had been the right call or the catastrophic one, whether she had just averted a disaster or walked a 7-year-old child into the epicenter of one. Lily stepped forward. Mara's hand caught her shoulder. Stopped her. Lily looked back. Mara held her gaze for exactly 1 second. Then, she released her grip. Lily walked to the Queen. She stopped 2 feet away, the instinctive distance of a child who respects something large and unknown, and held out the flatbread with both hands. The gesture was identical to the way she'd held it in the corridor. An offering. Uncomplicated. Without politics or protocol or 300 pages of diplomatic preparation. "You were hungry," Lily said. "I heard you." The Queen looked at the bread. Mara had her hand on her sidearm. Not drawing. Just present. Reminding herself it was there. Rethella reached out with one elongated hand, 4 fingers, the joints reversed from human anatomy, the skin a layered grey gold that had started very faintly to recover its iridescence from the moment the door opened, and took the flatbread from Lily with a precision so careful it was almost tender. She held it. Examined it. The secondary eyes opened. Then, she ate. Not quickly. Not desperately. With a deliberateness that Mara recognized, after a long moment, as dignity, the dignity of someone who had been waiting too long and was determined not to lose themselves in the waiting. The temperature in the chamber rose 3 degrees in 90 seconds. Mara felt it in her hands first. Then, her shoulders. The vibration she'd felt through the door faded. The Queen's carapace, segment by segment, began to recover its color, blue returning first, then, gold following like sunrise, spreading outward from the center of her thorax. The Queen finished the bread. She regarded Lily with both sets of eyes. Then, she made a sound, quiet, precise, harmonic in a way that resonated in Mara's sternum, and the briefing documents had that one. Mara knew it. She had read it in the cultural section, footnote 17, almost skipped it. Gratitude expressed to one outside the September highest informal register. Traditionally unrequested. Lily smiled. "You're welcome," she said, as if this were completely normal. As if she had simply brought a snack to a neighbor. Boots in the corridor. Voices. Admiral Reyes arriving with Ambassador Chen 40 seconds behind. Mara could hear the controlled urgency of people who had been running and were now walking because running would show how afraid they had been. Mara turned to face the door. She would stand here. She would give her account clearly, without excuses, without minimizing what she'd done or inflating it. She had violated dual authorization protocol. She had allowed a civilian child to interact with a foreign sovereign in an active diplomatic chamber. She had used her emergency override outside its sanctioned parameters. She had also stopped a Stage 2 Velda event from becoming a Stage 3, in a corridor with a maximum thermal containment rating that would not have survived it, in a compound housing 300 personnel, 48 hours before a summit that 7 billion people were depending on. She would let the Admiral decide what that was worth. Reyes stepped into the chamber. Stopped. Took in the scene, the Queen, sitting upright now, color restored, both sets of eyes calm and open, the child, standing 2 feet away with the unconcerned expression of someone who had done a simple thing, Mara, at parade rest, ready. The Admiral looked at Mara for a long time. Then, she looked at the Queen. Rethella held Rhea's gaze. And she made another sound, different from the one she had directed at Lily. This one was formal. Structured. The briefing documents had this one too, in the diplomatic section, not the footnotes. Recognition of debt between houses. Binding under Varel law. Not transferable. Not revocable. Ambassador Chen translated it aloud, his voice careful and precise, because even after 19 years of diplomatic service his hands were shaking slightly. "She's saying," Chen said quietly, "that the child saved a queen. And that under the Sixth Accord's compact of living debts, that means," he stopped. Looked at Lily. Looked at Mara. His voice dropped further. "That means 7 billion people just got a protectorate guarantee that 60 years of negotiations couldn't produce." Lily tugged on Mara's sleeve. "I told you she was hungry," the girl said. The chamber was warm now. Fully, completely warm. And Mara, who did not cry, who had not cried since the station she didn't talk about, who had kept everything level and contained and measured because that was what the job required and the job had always been enough, felt something shift in the left side of her chest. Not breaking. Not collapsing. Settling. Like a weight she had carried so long she had forgotten it wasn't supposed to be there, finally, recognizing it was no longer needed, and letting go. She stood at attention while the Admiral began asking her questions. She answered every one. Outside the chamber, through walls that were no longer cold, 7 billion people continued their lives without knowing how close the edge had been. Lily found a spot near the wall and sat down cross-legged, watching everything with bright, patient eyes, already looking for the next thing nobody else had noticed yet.